Hey guys, Kane here, and in this video we're gonna go over mages versus rogues. Now, majority of this information will come from a player who has played with rogues and mechs as their main heroes for majority of my game time, and only recently just implemented mages into the formation. So do keep that in mind. Also, do keep in mind that majority of this information is from a player which doesn't have very high research and is essentially in like the mid tier of the gameplay or game length or stuff like that in the meta. So as well, you're not going to probably receive the very high end or very late game meta information. So without that, first, we're gonna talk about the cost of each of the heroes. Starting with the mages, Avril, as you can see here from the equipment that she has, she doesn't actually cost a lot to get going. All of these equipments are free to get, and this Drake set comes from the dragon. The artifact is a free artifact that you receive for free and very early, and the prism is a true emerald with a wave power. Now, most of the heroes will require a true prism, so that is pretty much like a given if you want to make a hero overpower. Now, in the versions of Valerie, she's the same as, let's say, Avril. That majority of the equipment, if not all of them, are free to get. Void, Dragon, and then you have the artifact, which is premium. However, you have two choices of the artifact. So basically, this premium artifact will increase her damage by quite a lot. However, you can also use the Sunflare, which is not as good as the Arcane Rod. However, a lot of people use it for range 25% and also critical hit damage by 30%. So those two bonuses also are quite crucial to make sure that your Valerie does in fact survive. And if you don't have a lot of premium materials or like 50 or 65 bucks to upgrade, which as you can see I'm also not spending on it as well, you can use the Sunflare for events or some PvP. So her cost can be quite high, I suppose, to get going. At the same time, it can be free as if you just put on another artifact. And the prism is Arcanist Fury in the version of True Emerald. Now going towards the three other rogues and mechs. So, for example, Nora, she does require the Clash of Fate set, which essentially is free. However, you do require to participate in them for quite a bit, I suppose, and you can acquire the full set in probably your second, third, or even fourth month of game time, depending when the event appears, depending on your rank, depending on a lot of other factors, and in some cases, it may even take a lot longer. So it's a bit harder to get than Dragon set, I suppose, because in that, let's say, 2 or 3 months, you can just grind the same dragon over and over, and essentially you will be able to get a full Drake set, or rather the full dragon and not the Drake set. The other equipment are from events or void, so those are easy to get. The artifact is Sunflare, which is free, and the prism is True Ruby as a Draconic Storm. Now you have to keep in mind that this entire hero is pretty goddamn bad if you don't have a True Ruby in the version of Draconic Storm. Many other heroes you can still somewhat use them without a proper prism, but like Nora is a non-existent hero. She's like almost zero on your field if you don't have this prism at all. So do keep that in mind. You require this prism to make this hero work. Now going towards the two rows. So Bazrik does in fact require a flawless Drake set, or not flawless, just a Drake set in general. And without this, he loses a lot of damage in the version of critical hit damage. And as you know, a Bashrik does have a lot of critical hit, as well as his third attack is in fact a critical hit, I do believe. So basically, every second or so, he's scoring a critical hit with high percentages of critical hit damage and so on. And the target will take 20% bonus physical damage for a few seconds. And also, the three piece adds all ability levels +1. And as you know, Bazrik's damage comes from all of his abilities. So the other equipment are pretty much basic. You can acquire from Void or Clash of Fate or stuff like that, or events. The artifact is free to acquire and upgrade. The prism is Whirling Blade. Honestly, this is probably one of the better prisms that you can put on Bazrik if you want to make Bazrik a DPS type hero. And sometimes he may be able to carry your PvP. Now, for Saizo, after they released the potential, he actually started doing some decent damage. So I will try to get a true Ruby and then test him out whether or not he will be able to score some decent type of DPS. Now, as you can see, he has almost 900 without a proper prism. However, if I would put a proper true Ruby prism on him in the versions of like Devastating Strike, he would actually have about 1.4 million attack ish, I suppose, similar to that of Bazrik, and he may do like 100 to 100 million damage, which could potentially be rather quite good. Now, the same as Basri, he does in fact require a flawless, or rather, Drake's set in general doesn't require to be flawless for the versions of critical hit damage and also the increased bonus physical damage and all ability levels +1. The reason for that is, as Basric, all of his damage comes from his abilities in the version of Bloodhunt, Mistblade, and also the Infiltrate. So if you don't have those in particular, the damage that Saizo will do may be a lot lower. As well as the Iga Shuriken, you do require to upgrade this to get him going as well, and this is like a premium artifact, so it costs from 50 to 65 bucks to get this 5-star as well. And the prism would require to be a true Ruby and a devastating strike. So essentially, like these two rogues do cost quite a bit to pretty much get going and be the top DPS in the fights. And essentially, Bazrik is the front line, so he can easily be sniped as well. So majority of his DPS is kind of luck based, depending or not whether heroes and archers do focus him early on. So why did I touch that information? And it's very, very crucial in the fights that I will show you. Now, I will show you just, let's say, the damage charts of the fights. And again, this will be based on only the damage charts. This will not be based on like, hey, I've beaten somebody a lot higher core or something like that. So going on to the fight where I faced a lot stronger guy with friggin' insane archers. As you can see, in this particular fight, my Nora did the highest damage, but that can easily be explained because my Avril and Valerie, they died fairly early on. The reason for that is being like this guy having friggin' archers and heroes twice my power, and as you can see, all of his heroes are friggin' 65 or 70. So let's say the damage charts from this particular fight are not really that correct. So in a fight like this, against a bit higher castle level and core, I've done quite a lot of damage with Avril, as you can see. So Avril almost 500 million, Valerie 200, and then come the Nora and the Bazrig. And as you can see, Saizo without a proper prism, without the Drake set, is doing like 85 million. So essentially, I may try to swap Bazrik and Saizo's equipment and test him out whether or not he's going to perform good. So going to another fight, this one was a flawless victory. As you can see, Avril 400 million, then Nora 200, Bazrik 100, then Valerie, then Saizo is a lot lower. And then I have like another fight. This one wasn't a flawless victory, but as you can see, Avril is like the top DPS constantly. And I only cast like one or two skills of her towards the backline. The archers are getting destroyed, as well as like a couple of heroes, which quite a lot of times she snipes the good heroes that would, in a sense, may carry the enemies rather field, and Avril does happen to get rid of them rather quite early. So from the fights that are really shown, the amount of materials that you do require to invest to actually get them going is rather quite low. And like this fight as well, as you can see, this guy has tier 18 stuff. The damage is twice as high as my own. So the damage charts. Nora is in a very safe position. Avril and all the other DPS are in the front line. So essentially, Avril died like 10-20 seconds earlier than Nora. So that type of DPS is rather very, very hard to judge. Most of the time, you have to judge the fights which last quite a bit longer. But as you can see, like the amount of materials that I spent and the amount of research that I have invested on these heroes, they don't really transfer well in the terms of the fights. Now, that stuff can easily be explained, and how it can be explained is that majority of the mages, they do remove resistances of the things or army or heroes that they are attacking. So let's go to Valerie and check the burning. So burning enemies magic resistance is reduced by 25%. So this doesn't say that it reduces the burning magic resistance in general or stuff like that. It says the enemies that are burning, their magic resistance is reduced. So do keep that in mind. We will go back to that in a bit. So, going to the research towards mages, there is a research which I had missed before. It reduces the magic resistance of units damaged by mage and necromancer heroes by 46%. So basically, this is the same as the Valerie's burning ability. If you damage a unit, its magic resistance just plops down low. I'm not sure of how this effect goes, but after increasing it, the mage started to do quite a lot more damage. Now, in the version of going back to, let's say, Valerie, the Arcane Rod has this thing on the 5-star. Magic damage from basic attacks after Arcane Awakening renders the target 40% more vulnerable to magic damage from heroes. Basically, this means plus 40% magic damage, anyone doing magic damage to the heroes, or something like minus 40% magic resistance, or whatever, depending how you take that wording into consideration. And because they are removing the magic resistances and stuff, that they are able to do a lot of damage. Now, most of the heroes in the version of like rogues and mechs I have checked, they don't really have something like that. So, for example, they have one called the Crushing Blows, basic attacks of rogues and mechs. Weakened armor, increasing the physical damage taken by 20%. However, this doesn't say it reduces physical resistance. It says it makes the armor weaker, increasing the damage they take by 20%. So this is just increasing the damage on the unit or target, but not still reducing the physical resistance in terms of that damage, which is quite crucial because even this damage can somewhat, I suppose, be reduced by the physical resistances. And like if it was remove 20% physical resistance, so then the rogues and the mechs would do a ton of damage. So you have to keep that in mind. This is something else. And in a sense, they don't have something like that in their researches. And I suppose that is the reason why the rogues and mechs are not doing so much damage, is they do require a high amount of attack to actually bypass through the physical resistances and still do quite a lot of damage, while the mages, they do have the magic resistance removals. They do have them in the research, in skills, in literally like even some artifacts. And that is why majority of the time they're doing so much damage in the early to mid game, whereas the rogues, they don't scale well because a lot of people don't understand that when you're in the early game, a lot of the army, they don't have physical resistance, they don't have magic resistance, they don't have critical hit resistance. And a lot of players playing in the early game, they don't understand that majority of like frontline and units, they take so much damage because they're not very well upgraded in a lot of features. And you come to understand this thing when, let's say, the blade masters and stuff like that, they reach do you believe somewhere in here, I think rank 11. Then at the same time, let's say they reach 9 star, reduces damage taken by clansmen from critical hits, stuff like that. Like, majority of the time, all of these things, whenever they appear, the rogues just literally plop down in damage so much that they just do nothing at all. And that can be the same mentioned in the version of mages. In the early, the mages can even one-shot front lines. However, the further they're going, they're not doing an insane amount of damage. And I can easily just use one of my replays as an example. So in this fight, I didn't have a flawless victory. So let's see what happens. So I'm gonna cast my Valerie up until the Yip here. So as you can see, Avril is casting, and the front line is taking no damage whatsoever from my Avril with the burning damage. However, it's reaching towards the archers and also the Yip, and they are taking quite a lot of damage. And look, the front line right here, Valerie is damaging them from here, and they're also taking almost no damage. The same for here, Avril is casting here again, and they are taking no damage whatsoever. So you have to keep in mind that majority of the time, at some point in the game, the armies, or rather frontline, will become so tanky that particular heroes are not going to explode everything in just 2 seconds, and people who over-invest into one or the other may not also perform quite well in PvP. So personally, if I were to suggest people to use mages or rogues, I would actually suggest people to first invest into mages and then slowly invest into rogues, because you can use mages for a lot more events, and rogues and mechs, they're not really that useful for many others. Now of course there are some like Dark Dimension where you do require the rogues and or gladiators, but there are a lot of other events like Pinnacle, like Kingdom Guardian, all that kind of stuff, which a lot of people not on a Kraken level, which still require the mages to even pass to the highest of stages. Now in this particular event, I've cleared this with 2 heroes in the version of Valerie and I think Cleo, just to make sure that all of those Sylvani archers are in the range of Valerie. Now, I'm not a Lich main or whatever. I was using Lich for this, and like the highest, or rather the worst part of this particular field is these cavalries, which evade a lot of the attacks or take almost no damage. So that aside, yeah, that's I suppose pretty much it for the video. Honestly, I don't regret investing into mages, and I honestly started regretting investing into rogues and mechs. Now, I'm not going to destroy my rogues and mechs or stuff like that. I'm still gonna be using them on my field because they are invested and they still perform their particular job. Like if Basri happens to survive, he will do damage to backline with the Bat Blitz. If Saizo manages to survive, he can still do some decent damage. Nora as well, if she survives, she can still do decent damage, so stuff like that. However, the damage quite clearly belongs to the mages, and I'm not entirely sure about the new one, the Aerion. Perhaps in the future I will try to test him out as well. We will see how it goes. But from now on, I would hand like the majority of the power from early to mid game towards the mages, and it's not like just a little bit stronger, but it's more like insanely more stronger. Anyways, hopefully this video was useful to you. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay safe out there.